The Caroline phase of the Hundred Years' War marks a significant shift in the conflict, spanning roughly from 1369 to 1389. Named after Charles V of France, who reigned from 1364 to 1380, this phase of the war saw a reversal of fortunes for France, as the country went from a position of weakness to one of strength, largely due to the strategic brilliance of Charles V and his leadership. Background: the Edwardian and Plantagenet phases. Before the Caroline phase, the war had been defined by the Edwardian phase 1337 to 1360 and the Plantagenet phase 1360 to 1369, where England under Edward III and later his son, Edward the Black Prince, had gained significant territorial advantages in France. By 1369, the English had control over large parts of northern France, including key cities like Calais. However, France was still not completely defeated, and by the late 1360s, the French monarchy under Charles V began to recover from its setbacks. Charles V, often called the Wise, came to the throne after the death of his father, John II of France, who had been captured by the English at the Battle of Poitiers, 1356. With the French crown weakened and large parts of France under English control, Charles V adopted a more defensive and strategic approach to the war. The start of the Caroline phase, 1369. The Caroline phase officially began in 1369 with Charles V's declaration of war against England. This marked a shift from the earlier phases of the war, where large-scale battles and conquest dominated, to a more methodical strategy of attrition and guerrilla warfare. Charles V's primary aim was to regain the French territories that had been lost to the English. The strategy: Charles V avoided large-scale confrontations with the English and instead focused on smaller skirmishes, harassment of English supply lines, and recapturing key territories. He was adept at using French allies and local militias to reclaim lost lands and disrupt English operations. The role of Bertrand du Guesclin. One of the key figures in this phase was Bertrand du Guesclin, a brilliant French military leader who had emerged during the earlier stages of the war. Du Guesclin played a vital role in implementing Charles V's strategy by leading successful raids and employing siege warfare tactics to weaken the English position in France. His efforts led to the recapture of Poitiers, 1372, and other important regions, greatly boosting French morale. Key developments of the Caroline phase. 1. The recapture of French territory. Under Charles V, France regained significant portions of its territory through a series of successful military campaigns. The French reclaimed key cities, such as Limoges, Angoulême, and La Rochelle, effectively reducing the English holdings in the south and west of France. This territorial recovery was one of the defining aspects of the Caroline phase. 2. The Treaty of Bretigny and its aftermath. Although the Treaty of Bretigny, 1360, had temporarily ended hostilities and secured large swaths of French territory for England, the English were unable to maintain control over these lands. The recovery of French territory in the late 1360s and early 1370s, aided by a combination of French military successes and English internal difficulties, reversed many of the territorial gains made earlier in the war. 3. Decline of English power in France. The Caroline phase also witnessed a gradual decline in English power. Edward III had been severely weakened by financial difficulties, and the Black Death, which struck Europe in the 1340s, had devastated English manpower. These factors, combined with the growing success of Charles V's campaigns, led to a situation where England could no longer sustain its earlier military dominance. End of the Caroline phase, 1389. The Caroline phase essentially ended in 1389 with a period of relative peace. By then, France had regained most of the territory lost in the previous phase of the war. England, under Richard II, entered a phase of internal strife, which further reduced its ability to continue the war. Additionally, Charles V had passed away in 1380, leaving his son, Charles VI, as the new king. However, Charles VI was a young and unstable monarch, leading to the eventual decline of France's cohesive military leadership in the coming years. Conclusion: The Caroline phase of the Hundred Years' War was a crucial period that saw the French shift from a defensive position to a more assertive one under the leadership of Charles V. Through strategic warfare, careful diplomacy, and effective military leadership by figures like Bertrand du Guesclin, France was able to regain much of the territory lost to England. This phase set the stage for future French victories and marked a significant turning point in the war, as the balance of power began to shift in France's favor.